Paul, you ready on your end? Great. Looks like we're streaming live now. Good morning, everybody. Today is March 18th, 2021. This is Public Works meeting continued from actually a few weeks ago. We're going to be discussing issues primarily related to customer service on billing and infrastructure, along with a little bit about the power last night. With that, I will do a roll call. Councilmember Moreno.
Present.
Councilmember Palmer.
Present.
Councilmember Glapion.
Present.
Councilmember Banks.
Banks or Palmer this time? Which am I?
You decide. You make the call.
Okay, well, I'll be Banks now. Thank you.
All right. And I'm here as well. So we have all five members of the committee here. Thank you so much for being here. Because we are still in COVID virtual times, this meeting will be conducted virtually. I will read the agenda, which is short but substantive, and then we will take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back from the break, look at the minutes, and then get immediately to the presentations. Item number 1 on today's agenda, roll call. Item number 2, approval of the minutes from the January 12, 2021 Joint Transportation Public Works Committee meeting. Item number 3, approval of the minutes from the February 23rd, 2021 Joint Utility Public Works Committee meeting. Item number 4, presentation and discussion of SWIBNO quarterly reports. SWIBNO will present on its February 1, 2021 quarterly report submitted pursuant to Louisiana Revised Statute 334091 with a focus on power, billing, customer service, and finances. This item was continued from the 2/23/21 Joint Utility Cable, Telecommunications, and Technology and Public Works Committee for additional discussion. Item number 5, adjournment. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is now 10:02. We will take a break to 10:12. If anybody has any comments, please submit those, and the clock will tick for the next 10 minutes. We'll stand at ease until 10:12, and we'll be right back. Thank you all very much. All right, everybody, this is the 2-minute warning. We'll be coming back in 2 minutes. Paul, have we gotten any public comments yet on any of these topics?
We have 2 comments, but they're from the same person on the same item, so it's looking like 1 comment.
Okay, and is that on item number 4?
let me load it up real quick.
Yeah.
Yes, it's on the quarterly report.
Thank you. Paul, it looks like we may have another comment or two straggle in. I'm getting some emails about that, so we may wind up with a few more. But with that, I will call the meeting back to order. I am here. I see Councilmember Banks. I see Councilmember Moreno. I see Councilmember Glapion. Councilmember Palmer, are you still on? All right, well, we'll begin with those four. Councilmember Palmer rejoins. We're fine. We have quorum to begin. So with that, may I have a motion for the approval of the January 12, 2021 meeting minutes?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Councilmember Banks, second.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Glapion. If anybody objects, speak up. That's 4 yeas then and no nays. Thank you. And for the record, no public comment on items 2 or 3. Item number 3 is approval of the minutes from February 23rd, 2021 joint meeting. May I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Moved by Councilmember Banks,
Second.
second by Councilmember Glapion. Anybody who objects, please speak up. That's 4 yeas and no nays to item number 3 then. Thank you all very much. With that, we'll go to item number 4, which is the February quarterly report. We postponed doing that as a result of the power shedding on Mardi Gras evening. Welcome back Ghassan and his team today to talk about a couple of items of particular interest there. And Ghassan, before we sort of got on, I said what I'd like to do is if you could take some time to talk about the power situation, and particularly how the system fared last night. And then what I'd like to do is sort of just jump right into the heart of the billing deliverables and go to that second to last slide, and we can come back and talk about the business analysis being performed. I also know people are interested in infrastructure. And as a framing for this meeting, I think the focus is really on customer service writ large. You have a new customer service director. I see Renee Gonzalez is on here, and I know Sujan Water Board is very excited about this. But I think what it comes down to at its core is how do we make things easier for people, whether it's with their bills and making sure not only that they are accurate, but also if there's an issue that those can be dealt with as quickly, as effectively and properly as possible. And then similarly with infrastructure, what can we do to not only hasten reporting, but also ensure there are some timelines that people are aware of, so they're getting the information that they need. And I realize the infrastructure is ancient; it's older than J, but it's been around for a long time. And so, how do we sort of both prioritize what needs to be done, understand that there are emergencies, and also have a schedule that people can be aware of, maybe not with mathematical certainty, but with assurances that work will be completed in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, because I think that's what people are hungry for. So with that, Ghassan, welcome. Would you please spend some time talking about power, and thank you for being here with your team.
Of course, happy to be here as always. Appreciate the opportunity to allow us to share what we're doing here at the Supervision Water Board. As I've told you in private, Councilman Giruso, that we look at these dialogues as a way to improve the way we provide service to our customers, and we can't do better, we can't improve without your input and feedback. So we take that very seriously, and I hope that we see that in things that we've implemented recently in response to many of the insight and guidance that you and other council folks have provided us. So I do appreciate this opportunity. Relative to what happened last night, obviously we take every rain event seriously, and yesterday was no different. Our team in preparation took specific sets of measures to be prepared. We put Turbine 1 online. We also put 4 of EMDs online as well. And not only rain is what we worry about, we also worry about wind conditions, which yesterday was definitely a factor. So in reaction or in anticipation of that, we take down energy supply of power to our frequency changers, and we stand up T6, which is the most new generator that produces 60 hertz, and then we run it through the frequency changer, and then obviously convert that to 25 cycle to run our pump. So we had T1, 4 EMDs, T6 as well, obviously utilizing the frequency changers. We had rainfall amounting to about 1.5 inches, and we managed the storm fairly well. We had no issues to really mention, and it was a successful event in general. Obviously, the EMDs and the noise that they produce are an issue. We do acknowledge that. In anticipation of that, and based on a lot of feedback from you and the neighbors that are impacted, we communicated that in advance with lots of apologies, obviously, but it's just, we do not sugarcoat the fact that they are noisy and they do cause a lot of diminished quality of life when they're operational.
And I know, Ghassan, we're all working on that, the mayor, the board, and what we're going to do. And I'll also, as we have these every other week or weekly meetings on power, I've asked our advisors to include as part of that what sound will look like with a substation, with T7, with the possibilities of T8, T9. So that way we're studying this front end and not having to try and address it back end as well. Absolutely.
I truly believe that the sound mitigation should be part of the package of what we're delivering, not just in equipment, but its impact on the neighboring community. So we're fully cognizant of that.
Yeah, and good. I think that's a good place to start. Can I just ask this? I know we spent time on power last time, and you all had a board meeting where much of this was discussed. So I don't want to plow old ground, but I do think it merits discussion. Turbine 4 is slated to go back online in May, and Turbine 5 is slated to go back online in June.
Yes, both are on track. There's no deviation from the schedule. I mean, this may be too much in the weed, but obviously the cold snap and the issues that Texas struggled with impacted a couple operational issues for our vendor, but they overcame that. It was about a 2-day situation. They overcame it, and we're back on schedule. So there's really no issues thus far, and we're very, very committed to bringing both of those, as we have been saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I would like the story, and I know sometimes the feeling is all you hear from me is criticism, but I do think part of that is the other side of it, which is this is something good. That power and almost 40 megawatts of it will be restored by mid-June, and that's a significant shot in the arm, not only to Sewage and Water Board, for the people who live here. So that's something that is important to discuss.
And Mr. Chairman, it has to be said, because I said it yesterday, the Board of Directors meeting, you know, 4 and 5 are coming back as a temporary measure, and that's how they should be looked at collectively as a city. We should not accept that as a solution. That's why we're keeping our really main focus on delivering the T7, delivering frequency changers to maximize the use of T6, hopefully the T7, and ultimately to provide the substation and it becoming the primary source of power. So that's what we should be, you know, looking forward to and celebrating, not the T4 and 5, although they're going to be very instrumental for the immediate future.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I guess, Ghassan, to close out this power loop too, one of the other issues has been T6 and the fact that it hadn't been weatherized. That is now in process, right? And so by winter 2021, T6 will now be able to run in whatever it is, 45 or 42 degrees, right? So when we approach the winter season, that will now be hardened.
Absolutely. And in addition to that, we are making improvements to it to maximize its full capacity. And you will see it go from 15 megawatts, which is today, its capacity today, to up to 22 megawatts. So again, major improvement, and that's what the future looks like or relies on, you know, a modern piece of equipment with maximum capacity of 22.
And do you have a date by which the weatherization will be complete?
The weatherization should be imminent, maybe within 2 months, but well within before obviously next winter and when it will be needed.
Good. All right, great. My colleagues don't have any more power questions. I was going to move to the 2 issues that Councilmember Palmer and Councilmember Nguyen brought up last time, primarily billing and infrastructure. And Councilmember Palmer, we got this PowerPoint presentation yesterday from Sewage and Water Board. What I was thinking is I'd really like to start on this slide, which is the second to last one, which is the deliverables. And I know Sewage and Water Board spent time on what they plan on doing and how they plan on rectifying it. But I think what I want to hear, and I would think what the public wants to hear, is really what are the things that we can really see and expect. And when we come back here in September or October for a meeting and say, all right, we've had 5 years of a billing process that hasn't worked, and people getting bad bills and inaccurate reads and flagging problems and everything you can imagine with a bill happening, that this is something that is beginning to act as a cure. And so with that, I don't know, Ghassan, will be you or Renee wants to talk about it, but I think this is the area I think we really want to focus on this morning.
Absolutely, and it's certainly understandable why we want to all focus on those 2 topics. Just a general comment regarding whether it's escalation or bill disputes. Obviously, our main goal is to eliminate, or at least realistically speaking, minimize those situations in general, and that's what we are aiming to do. These are temporary measures mitigating bill disputes and the process by which we make a customer whole, or the escalation process. I mean, those are things that really we should not need to do as much when we have the full solutions in hand. So obviously from a bill perspective, I want you to know, I want the public to know that we're focusing on increasing our capacity to read meters to minimize the need for estimates, which typically what has been the source of angst and conflict between us and our customers. So we are aiming to get as many as 60 readers on the field. We just introduced about 15 of them this past Monday. 8 are coming up next Monday, up to about 50, 51. And with a continuous effort to hire those folks and the hiring rate should always be ahead of the drop-off rate, because we have a high turnover in that space, and we have to stay ahead of that. So that really is a very crucial step that we're taking, and I think it's going to bear fruit sooner rather than later. It's again, the more we read and the more we read accurately and input accurately, the less we need to dispute bills. So, so I just want to make sure that it's known that we are aiming at more of a base and more core solution rather than the dispute process. So, but on the process itself, obviously, with Renee coming on board, bringing a fresh set of eyes, bringing his expertise managing similar situations and creating improvements in his past 10 years elsewhere, he's obviously breaking down that process and helping make it more obviously customer friendly, more fair, and more expeditious. And this is exactly what one of the things that he's focusing on. I'm going to ask him to maybe weigh in specifically relative to that, but I think it's also worth speaking about the escalation process as well. If when the time allows. So Renee, if you don't mind, maybe just explain in your own words and based on your own findings and observations, what things you plan on doing for the benefit of the committee.
Yeah, thank you, Ghassan, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. Councilmember Giarrusso, I completely understand your frustrations, probably not just yours, probably most people attending this meeting, and couldn't agree more with you in regards to the urgency that is necessary to resolve all of these shortcomings in our customer's journey, for sure. Absolutely acknowledge it and agree with it. The actions or the efforts that the water board has taken recently, hiring additional meter readers, opening the satellite offices, all these activities, those are efforts that this is my personal opinion, to resolve an urgent need, right? They're not necessarily the things that we need to do to take us long-term to where we want to be, right? If we want to transform the utility to really be able to serve our customers the way they deserve to be, served and treated, we certainly have to look for more permanent and long-term solutions. So I understand your interest in spending maybe most of our time talking about this slide. But I'd like to know, Councilmember Giarrusso, if there's any specific things that you have in mind that you want to talk about before I go to the presentation.
I mean, I can speak for myself first. I mean, I'm glad to hear the word urgency, Renee, but I mean, again, just in the full interest of candor, this has been an issue since I was on my neighborhood association. It's been an issue when we all campaigned. It remains an issue, and there are these multiple pinch points along the way, and I think there's to me, and I want my colleagues to weigh in after I've said my piece, is there's a couple of different things. Number one is there's a bad bill that's generated. You guys have said that at one point you're flagging 1,500 bills a day, now 1,000 bills a day. That's a lot of bills to flag. Things are slipping through the cracks as a result of that. So bills that shouldn't be sent are being sent. You know, I've actually had people who've gotten tens of thousands of dollars of bills who say, well, I know that's so patently wrong, I'm not frustrated, but that bill that's $100 or $200 seems to actually cause more heartburn because it hits closer to home and seems like it might be real. And then most of the slide is dedicated to the dispute process and streamlining that. I guess what I want is sort of very clear established rules for the road, so that it's clear in particular for the customer and the ratepayer how things are going to work, will work, makes it easier for them to work. That's sort of number one. And then number two, how do we measure success, right? And I mean, I appreciate the fact that you are here, this is going to be a new day, but in 6 months, are we going to come back and say, you know, we got, I'm just making up a number, Sewage and Water Board got 6,000 disputes and we resolved, truly resolved, without escalating, without going to administrative hearing, without council member engagement. We resolved 90% of those. And I don't know what the right rate is, but I think it's both of those things. And I've said this before, I truly believe that this issue, billing, will make or break sort of Sewage and Water Board in the near term, because it is the single most outward facing thing that the public has with the agency. People understand that the system is old. People understand that those pipes are 70, 80, 90 years old. They understand it takes time to do with that. And obviously with COVID, finances are down. But when they get that bill and it's their name on it and it's higher than it should be, and it's happened in some cases more than once, it sets them off like a firecracker, and that hurts the credibility. So that's my piece. Councilmember Palmer, I know you're on the line. You weighed in last time. I'd love to hear from you and any other colleagues who have their own takes.
Thank you, Chair. I have to agree with you 100% when you say this is the issue that's going to make or break Sewage and Water Board, because quite frankly, I'm at the point where I'd never want to approve another penny going to Sewage and Water Board if you can't clean up customer service. I've said that before. I'm going to continue saying it publicly. To me, it's like throwing good money after bad, because if you can't take care of your customers, there's going to be zero faith that you can make any of these repairs that we so desperately need throughout our entire system. And I'm tired of hearing excuses. I'm flipping through this report and it doesn't tell me anything. I mean, I asked last time if we could have actual numbers. So you hired 25 additional meter readers to double internal capacity. What's existing capacity? How much do we need to get to the point? What are the actual timelines? What are we trying to do here? What does a healthy system look like in terms of estimating versus real time? And where is our public facing dashboard going to be, so that we as a citizen, I can pull up online how many complaints you've had per month, what is the average time to fix those complaints and to respond to those complaints, how many meter readers you have, how many automatic readers you have, what is our goal, and where are we in comparable to systems that actually work. And I'm not seeing any of these numbers in this report. Now, with that being said, I really want some of these things look interesting to me, that you're doing some SWOTs and diagnoses, but what are we holding? What is the level that we want to get to and to attain? And I haven't seen that anywhere in any PowerPoint. And so I'm frustrated, incredibly. I'm frustrated, not just as a citizen, as a business owner, as an elected official, when I read the angst that comes into our office consistently. And just this stuff should be simple. I really don't understand why we can't have decent customer service, but that's all I have to say. I really kind of, Chair, would like to see the entire report that they have here. But with that being said, I'm not seeing what our goals are, and I'm not seeing where we are versus where we're going. It just seems very general. So thank you.
And before any other colleague chimes in, thank you for that, Councilmember Palmer. The other thing I think, Councilmember Palmer, you mentioned that I think is important is that sort of outward facing mechanism or mechanisms, whether it's dashboards or showing, for example, After 2017, I think Sewage and Water Board showed all of its power and pump capacity, showing where you are in the billing cycle. And the reason, at least I say that, is I find when we have dashboards, it actually helps us, because a lot of times people will say, this is the case. And then you look at, for example, the crime dashboard that we have and say, well, actually, the numbers show this. And sometimes people are right and sometimes they're wrong, but the data is aggregated in there. And so people can see it. And I think here, to your point too, Councilmember Palmer, it's a see and a feel. And the hope is that people start feeling like it's a new day when it comes to getting these bills resolved.
Well, exactly. And not just that, it shows progress, right? I mean, I think like you said, Chair, that, we all know we inherited a bad system. And Ghassan, we know the tremendous amount of work that you've put in and the progress that's going, but we need to see that too with the customer service side. And I think if our citizens could see progress reported every month, they're going to have more faith in the system, and they would be willing to either approve more money or to see this, but we're not seeing that. And I think this could be a good space for you and for your team to show progress. And I think that's really important as well.
Councilmember Banks, I see that you want to chime in.
No, I just wanted to reiterate what Kristen was just speaking about. And this is a conversation that I've had privately with Ghassan, and I'm going to share it publicly now. The Sewage and Water Board gets beat up on a regular basis. Every time something goes wrong, then it's real easy to talk about that. But I don't think that we do enough to actually illustrate the good stuff that happens. Now, is it time now for us to spike the ball? No. But I assure you that this ball has been moved down the field further now than it has been in generations. Not decades, but generations. We are far closer to getting all of these issues resolved now than what we have ever been. Now, we're still a long way away, but I think every time we do get something done positively, we should publicize that at the same level as it's publicized when something goes wrong. We've got to get the public confident that we are making the progress that we are making. The fact that Renee is here is a big improvement, but that's just one. All of these incremental steps need to be highlighted. Now, this elephant that we are trying to eat is large, wide, and heavy. We will not eat this elephant in one bite. It's going to take multiple bites at a forkful at a time to get it, but every time we digest a fork, we need to be telling people that we're doing that. And Ghassan, I think that would help us go a long way. The Sewage and Water Board has two major issues: infrastructure and image. And until we can address the image, it is going to be very difficult to get the public confident enough to help us get the resources to provide repairs to the infrastructure. To me, it's very simple. And I think that Kristen is dead on point. Every time something good happens, it needs to be publicized so that folks get a comfort level that we are at least moving towards the goal where they need us to be. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I would say this, and I know Ghassan, you want to chime in. I started off with the power because I in my view, those things are headed in a direction, and there is a strategy and there's levels of execution. But Councilmember Banks, to your point, whether you want to use the Nike image is everything, or a little more biblical, God helps those who help themselves. I think the issue is if the image is going to be corrected, it's because the problems are being addressed and the public feels like the problems are being addressed. And so that is something that I feel like is in Sewage and Water Board's hands. And this critique is not meant to pillory Sewage and Water Board unnecessarily. It's been done. We're not here for headlines. We're here to see solutions. And so Ghassan, I know you want to weigh in, and I know also this has been weighing on you. In fairness, if I can say that, you and I have discussed this multiple times. This I know it weighs on you. I know people stop you. They know you now. You get their bills. You're getting stopped in coffee shops or restaurants. But I think what we're all trying to do, we're all searching for, whether it's the board, the council, leadership, is how do we before we get AMI in the ground, how do we start turning the ship on billing to make sure that things get better for everybody?
Absolutely, and thank you for allowing me to respond. You know, the word critique, it doesn't come to mind when I'm listening to you, because I know for a fact that Renee, Christy, Courtney, Ron, everybody on my team agrees with everything that's been said. And the words, you know, the billing issue will make us or break us is said every day in our shop. So we do fully recognize how important it is to address it. And it does frustrate us because we are not really doing it in any fast or satisfactory fashion on behalf of the customers. It really, really kills us that we're not able to deliver better results. Yes, the AMI is a solution, but it's 2-3 years out before it's fully implemented. You know, it's moving forward, it's progressing. We're able to find some funding that is, you know, turning to be a solid plan to actually fund it, so rather than slow it down. We're going to keep the momentum going. But in the meantime, we have a situation where we have to read 136,000 meters every month. These meters are the actual process. I mean, you're relying on good, dedicated readers to do their job, do it well. There are bad meters, there are bad readers. There are bad opportunities for bad inputs in terms of putting the one wrong digit and it blows an estimate. I mean, just everything that we do today is so full of opportunity for error. It's mind-boggling. It's a very antiquated system. But that's not, I mean, it sounds like it's an excuse, but it's not. It's just the fact, the reality. That's why we doubled our reading ability by bringing 60 readers. We're on the way. As I stated, we're at 51, 9 more, and we'll be at double. So we're moving from 30 to 60, recognizing that that's where one of the solutions lie, is having more people out there, more eyes, more control, more quality control, so the reads are more accurate. People can take their time cleaning the dirt off the lens, wiping it clean to make sure that we're reading it right. There are a lot of mini steps that we are taking to improve that. I know for a fact as early as January of 2020, we had reached 80% of reads. That was probably one of the highest numbers in a long time. Then COVID hits, our meter reading shop got hit bad, and then we just slumped to a all-time low, maybe as low as 30 or something. We're climbing back up. Our goal is to hit minimum 80, and I promised our board of directors to get to 90 and still not be satisfied. So that's our goal. And if we're short on telling you that, it's on us, really. We should be spelling it out more, and we should show you the progress. We reached 60, 65, and now we're dropping to 50. Again, it's a function of how many people attend, show up to work, how many people produce good reads versus flagged reads and all that. So there's a lot of things, a lot of variables that enter into our daily productivity and the quality. But again, getting us to the 60 will have a temporary solution, will provide a temporary solution on the quality and the quantity that we produce, and hence minimizing the disputes, the bad reads, the need for estimates and all that. But again, I've heard you loud and clear, we should be more proactively sharing those matrices with you. What mechanism we would use, we can talk about that, maybe a monthly reporting, maybe sharing our report to the board of directors. Something has to be maybe improved in terms of what we're doing and how we communicate with you. So,
Go ahead,
I appreciate allowing me to respond, and I'm happy to,
Of course.
Yeah, look,
We made some minor tweaks to like our pages as well. I know all the district council members have their committees and they put up information on their pages. We put up all the quarterly reports. We put up a summary. We send our Curo engineer, put up a summary. So it's about trying to get people information. And I appreciate the front end problems, and I know you've identified some of those. but maybe for a minute now, and with Renee or you, can we spend a minute on the customer gets the bill, right? They get the bill. They feel like it's inaccurate. It is inaccurate, whatever the case may be. What is something that is going to change to make their lives easier when they call 52 Water, or they go to Sanchez Center, or they come down to St. Joseph Street to try and get that taken care of without much effort?
Well, I'll start, and then hopefully Renee will supplement the answer. I can tell you we're focusing on the quality of interaction with our customers. So we are in the process of rolling out a software that allows our customer service agents a better way to communicate with our customers and navigate through a consistent and accurate answer to their inquiries. So the software is called Variant. It's widely used by many agencies such as ours, again, to simplify and streamline how we interact. So that, I think, is going to bring an improvement in quality and consistency. Two, I know Renee and I talked at length at improving and empowering that frontline staff to use their ability. I mean, empower them in the sense that you make a decision, we're going to stand behind you, to use common sense. And if something is so outrageously wrong, don't go through the motions of getting us to a hearing, rather than just kind of see if you can solve it on the spot, or maybe with one more call. So
Ghassan, can I interrupt you? I'm sorry for a second there. Can I just give you an example? So, my staff has probably attended close to 24 administrative hearings, and I've personally gone to 5 or 6. And again, what I feel like happens, and maybe it's just the 5 or 6 I went to, and I recognize that ratepayers make mistakes too, but it was literally this. Well, Mr. Jones, I'm looking at your billing history, and you usually average $125 per month, and I see these 3 estimates that are $400. They're clearly wrong. We're taking those out. You owe us, you owe us either nothing or what you didn't pay for the 3 that should have happened. I mean, that just seems, and again, I realize that's reductive and based only on anecdote, only on 5 or 6 instances, but it's so simple and just seems like that could have been handled 4 or 5 months earlier. And it also gets the customer feeling better about how something's resolved for them.
I totally agree. Again, it's in the culture changing from the scrutiny we give to our frontline agents relative to what they can and cannot do, and the mentality that every customer is trying to maybe game the system, or right. I mean, there are some facts that maybe the customers are not aware of, and they think they're being wrong, but in fact they're not. I'm gonna just take a second, if you'd allow me. I just happened to have a national study that was done based on leaky toilets alone. And I know that irks a lot of people when we say, can you check your toilet, make sure it's not running constantly? And that does happen. Here I'm just reading off a neutral site. Toilet usage accounts to 30 to 45% of household water usage. Okay, so that's a lot of water, right? A lot, high percentage. 20% of all toilets have a leak. That's 1 in 5. So if you start quantifying the slow, medium, or fast leaks, just take the medium leak. Okay, I know we're getting too much in the weed, but it's just a situation that's imposed on us where it could be a situation that's actually happening, and without vetting it and exploring it, we may not be able to fix the situation, right? And then that consumption is going to continue running high. And if we don't address it right on, and again, avoiding ticking off a customer, sometimes it's that simple. Just bear with me for a second. A medium leak amounts to about 250 gallons a day of usage, of consumption. Based on our rates, that's $126 for that month. That adds to your normal consumption. If it's a major leak, like you go on vacation and whatever that happens, could be as high as $2,000. an addition, and that throws everybody off, and it's like, what is going on? I'm just merely sharing this situation to bring light to the fact that it's not that easy to solve an issue on the spot. That's why we say, let's do some investigation. We ask you to maybe look at some things on your own, help us help you, and let's resolve it. So we want to do better education relative to what a leak toilet may cause, and that's one example. And hopefully will communicate better, will bring a solution rather than, you know, putting it on the customer, end up with a conflict without really needing a conflict.
And Ghassan, sort of Councilmember Palmer's point, to get to Councilmember Banks's point, you know, one of the things you have on here is written and published revised guidelines for bill disputes, the focus on empowering frontline customer service reps to resolve issues in one call. Not only is that something that is obviously desirable, but secondly, I would love to know the number of times that happens once this is fully implemented, right? So if you get, again, I'll use the same number, 6,000 phone calls, and 4,800 of them, it's resolved, truly resolved in one phone call. That's really good information. And then we know, all right, well, the 1,200, it was the person was out of town, the person's gaming the system, you know, the meter is old, and so they couldn't have caught it. Councilmember Palmer, so I just want to make sure if you have anything to say as you pop back up that I'm getting.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's exactly the kind of information that we want to see and track it, and again, public facing. But people would really appreciate that, and all your information about toilets running. I mean, that should be, you know, front center too. Is like what type of situations were found that created high bills. I mean, that should be really public facing as well, because then that would force a lot of folks to look inward too on their water usage. So, and then in your first, Ghassan, when you were talking, you know, all these numbers that you started throwing out, that we have to read 136,000 meters, that in January 2020, you were at 80% of reading, and then fluctuate. Those are the numbers that we want to see, and we can track it. And then we know that we're working, you know, we're moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. I hear you loud and clear.
Okay. And I guess, you know, I think we've said what we want to say about this, subject to anybody else chiming in. And I know either you or Renee singularly or both use the word culture change. And I think, you know, that is something that can't be underestimated too, right? When you have new ways of doing things, and even trying to empower people can be something of a change. To let them know this is your responsibility to fix. Will take time, but I think what we would like is, I think for me, sort of maybe 2 or 3 things. Number one is, when are these processes going to be implemented? Number 2, definitely in 6 months, what is the measurement of those processes? And then, you know, sort of, I guess, number 3, whether you have it or we can tell you anecdotally when we come back in 6 months, what are customers seeing that are different? And so, you know, is it thumbs up, things are improving, like, see, we're in the same spot, or, you know, no progress? That's a word Councilmember Palmer used, progress. And I think that's what we're all interested in with this. And I think before we go to the processes, which I do want to see, this is probably also a good time to talk about infrastructure, because at least in my view, the issue is very similar. Like, let me just give an example. There's a catch basin issue and there's a leak nearby. So what the ratepayer homeowner is supposed to do is technically call 311 and 5-2 water to report the catch basin and the water leak. Well, you know, frequently one happens and not the other. And then I know everybody wants to have something into their system, so I get that. But how do we improve that communication? And then I think 2, in the same line along deliverables, frequently there's a work order that's opened on a date. What is the expectation? Again, Ghassan, and I know Councilmember Palmer, Councilmember Glapion, and Moreno, all of us have sometimes issues. We're asking, can we address this? Can we bump it up? But at the same time, there are things that have been in the queue for months or years. How is that being worked down a list? And I think that would be helpful, like for us and as well as the public to kind of have an idea of where things stand in process, and then again the progress that's being done for those things.
I'm gonna let Renee start, and maybe I'll add anything if
Okay.
needed, because he's
Great.
been really studying that process. He's been communicating with all the folks that have influence on that process and the quality of how we communicate back to you. And then again, I will fill in if I need to. Renee.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Council member, it's probably easier for me to just go through the slides that we have.
Okay.
Yeah, because I have a lot of information. I feel confident that some of the questions will be answered by comments that I will make about the slides that are not in the slides. Then at the end, we'll be happy to go back again and answer any questions or address any concerns. Yeah.
All right. This Paul will run the slide deck, and you just tell him how you want to work it, Renee.
Okay. So we'll skip that one, guys. Okay. Okay. So I'll just spend briefly a couple of seconds on this one. I think it is important to just mention, and probably you've already seen this at some point, that during the last 6 months, customer service opened 2 new satellite offices, one in Sanchez Center, one in Rosa Keller. And then we currently established a temporary presence at the Firehouse and Venetian Isles in collaboration with Council Member Nguyen to address, I think, 120 or so concerns raised by her constituents. Like Hassan said, we've hired 25 additional meter readers, and they will be hitting the streets on March 15th. So we need 60, around 27 or 28. We've hired those 24 or 25. We have 9 vacancies. We're working actively to recruit those. Once we get to 60, and I know the Council Member Palmer, you asked for numbers, then we'll be more confident in regards to how we're going to measure that the success of that effort. So we're talking metrics and numbers and benchmarks. So more to come on that one. We've revised the process for identifying, reviewing flagged bills. The trigger was, that bill that was extremely high that we received maybe a month or maybe 6 weeks ago. It was human error. It wasn't about a tool or a process. It was just about the people component. Ghassan already mentioned that we're purchasing Verint. Verint will allow us to have better customer request tracking. It'll help us simplify work, and it'll provide more consistency in regards to escalations, and it'll enable enhancement to the process. Can we move? And then we hired this guy, Rene Gonzalez. So can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, so really to begin, it is important to realize that improving our utilities, customer service efforts just in general, like you all, I'm sure you all agree, needs to begin with an honest assessment, right, of our current performance. And we need to do so we can establish a baseline and we can establish metrics from which the improvement can be identified and developed, right? So to have a clear understanding of our current performance, I've been here now going on my 8th week. So tomorrow will be 2 months. So I did this SWOT analysis of the customer service division. Probably you all know that a SWOT analysis evaluates strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But in contrast to traditional SWOT analysis, in which typically senior executives are the main participants of the process, a SWOT that focuses on customer service needs to include input from employees at all levels of the organization, across divisions, and more importantly, those who regularly interact with customers, because they possess firsthand knowledge of our strengths and weaknesses, and they're able to provide this unique insight into what happens at every stage of the customer journey. So my main analysis is thorough, but it's straightforward, and it does consider the 4 key areas and takes into consideration what the customer impact in each area might be. So we then are able to align our actions with that outlook. Okay. Next slide, please. So based on the findings of the SWOT analysis, and I'll be happy to share that document with any of you if you want to see it. I found just a couple of strengths, or I don't know, maybe like 18 or 19 weaknesses. So based on the findings of the SWOT analysis, I've identified what I'll call like the 2 big priorities. And this is to improve organizational performance and then to increase customer confidence and trust. And really the overarching strategy that I'm developing, in coordination with a lot of people, and the collective efforts to improve both the internal and also the external customer experience is what we're calling the Customer Experience Improvement Project. So creating a culture of accountability, work, establishing smart goals, metrics, benchmarks, optimizing staff training development, promoting and developing a culture of continuous improvement, just some of the efforts that we will do or that we have already begun to do so. Next slide, please. And this is a really important slide, and I added this slide just to offer a visual representation of the approach that has worked for me throughout my career. So this is the Ppt Framework, or People, Process, and Tool, or technology. And you can think of this framework as a 3-legged stool, where if one leg is out of balance, then the stool wobbles, right? And for any PPT practitioner, we are also aware of the, like, what we call a triple constraint, to explain how the movement of one of those elements impacts the others. So if one shifts, then the other 2 must also respond, right, to maintain the balance. And there's disruption that is created. So no matter, what we call it or visualize it, the key is really in the balance of these elements. So in most projects or initiatives, you want 3 outcomes. You want to increase efficiency, speed of service, improve quality, and then meet or exceed expectations. So now, unfortunately, as much as people understand this concept and that there needs to be a balance of these 3 components, they often ignore or underestimate the people part of in practice. We pay lip service to say it's important, but it's the first thing that typically gets ignored. And if you're familiar with any change management framework, all of them begin with people, right? Which is why you'll see a lot of the people component in my strategy. So, process is okay, tools are okay, or somewhat okay, but the people, it should be our long-term focus. That's where our solution is going to be found. And I'll get more into the details in the next couple of slides. So next slide, please. So this is a quick and simple visual representation of what I'll call sort of like an evolving or living approach. So to the left, we have activities that enable us to understand the current state. So these are things that I use not to come in and say, okay, I see, I've been told there's an understanding, or it is clear that we have these issues. This is how I validate, right? So not for them. So instead of having assumptions, now I have a valid issue, right? So to the left, we have activities that enable us to understand the current state. And as we move to the right, you'll see some established frameworks and tools to help us uncover opportunities, peel the onion and eventually find root cause to the problems and the challenges. So we don't just spend our time fixing fires, putting out fires for the last 5 or 10 or 15 years. So then we move the change management based on the findings. We establish continuous improvement activities, and then we close the loop with training and development to ensure that people have the necessary abilities to embrace and implement change. And next slide. This is an actual timeline or screenshot of, this is from my personal calendar of some of the tasks that I have begun as part of the customer experience improvement project, and also shows some of the efforts that we will be pursuing in the next month or two. So these are tangibles, things that you can see, feel, and touch about progress that we're gonna be pursuing. I apologize for the small font, but again, this is an actual screenshot of my screen on my laptop. And next slide, please. So we also wanted to take this opportunity to show a graphic representation of our billing dispute process as designed, right? So beginning with the blue box on the top left, customer calls 52 Water to report an issue or concern. And we move to the right, call center staff is equipped to address those concerns, ask discovery questions, collect information, and then if applicable, submit a review to the billing department. Then the billing department reviews the information details, the notes, the payment history, and then depending on their findings, an inspection might be requested to the meter reading department, who then circles back to billing with their findings. Then billing then reviews all the findings and determines an outcome. And the outcome then is communicated to customers via post. And if customer is satisfied, then that dispute is considered closed and done. And then if not, customer has the option of requesting a hearing, which I think right now is taking around a couple of weeks to 2 weeks out. Next slide, please. So here we have a visual representation of the customer billings and the disputes. On the left, you can see the ratio of actual bills versus estimated bills. And obviously that's based on, well, most of these are based on estimated readings or actual readings. And then on the right, you have the number of accounts which have an existing dispute. You will see on the left that a bluer bar indicates more estimated bills. And if you look at the first couple of bars, kind of like to the left, and compare them to the last couple of bars to the right on that graph, you will see and notice a significant reduction of estimated bills. Now, as part of the SWOT exercises and analysis that you saw on the timeline and we've scheduled for the coming couple of months, these are the issues that we will be focusing on. These are the issues that I'll be analyzing to better understand the root cause of these shortcomings and to implement a stable and permanent solution. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Thank you so much, Gonzalez. I love this slide. What is, and I know you come from other places. What does this look like in terms of a goal, right? Like in terms of what you've seen in other utilities, in terms of estimated and actuals, what is our goal that we should be trying to attain here?
When I talk about goals, I will say that I am a metrics-driven kind of guy. My performance was evaluated for over 10 years using 124 metrics. That's how crazy it gets at AT&T. That's the truth, right? And I've been intentionally sort of like keeping away from the metric piece of all of this because it's easy for someone to just come in and try to establish, these, performance metrics. But when you have metrics or key performance indicators, you have to make sure that the ones that you choose are going to drive the right behaviors, right? So you have public-facing KPIs, right? But then you have metrics to measure performance internally. And I can't say with confidence that the metrics that we have today at this time are the ones that are driving the behaviors that we need to go to where we want to be. I can tell you that I'm leaning towards no, because we've had those metrics for a number of years and look at where we are, right? So, but I need to validate that concern, right? In regards to your specific question, Councilmember Palmer, in my previous job, for example, for estimated reads, because estimated reads is the root cause for the billing, right? You think about errors in billing and you think about the billing department. It's not the billing department. It's the estimated reads. There are some gaps in the billing department. It's not necessarily about the process, it's about the people, scale and ability, accountability, that sort of stuff. But the root cause is the read, right? That's the cycle from reading to cash, that's where it begins. In my previous utility, our goal for meeting reading accuracy was 99.96%.
Oh my God.
Okay. I say this with caution, right? Different territory, different terrain, different weather, different climate, different age of infrastructure. So there's a lot of components that are different. I'm glad to hear that, you know, we've been at over 80, maybe 85%, I believe Ghassan said, as recently as in January. I think we were at 80%. And you will get my commitment to deliver metrics and key performance indicators probably within the next 90 days, maybe 60 to 90 days. And I will make sure that those performance indicators are SMART goals. You probably already know what that means. And it's going to be really around the people, the reads, and, you know, it's the more layers I peel, the more finding and more sort of like complex that it becomes. There's high turnover in meter reading department. There's high turnover in the contact center in different departments. And the turnover really isn't a result of, many of times it's not the result of the job itself or the salary, it's about the leadership, okay? And I performed a leadership, you know, survey internally. I went out to out of 400 possible surveys, I received 334 responses. So like 89% of response rate. People had a lot to say. And if we continue to ignore the people piece of it, just like we ignored the infrastructure piece for many decades, and we're going to end up in the same place if we're not already there. Okay? So specifically about billing should be at least, you shouldn't have errors in billing and more than probably 1% of your bills in an ideal world. Okay, that's a stretch goal. That's not something that I'm committing to at this point. But nonetheless, something sure that we should strive for. And, you know, I don't shoot for perfection, but I do for excellence. And I expect the same from my staff. But I've only been here, you know, 6-7 weeks. So I'm sure and I feel confident that we will make significant progress in a relatively short period of time. Okay. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so this is probably of interest to all of us here. So in this slide and the following, the intent is to offer a visual representation of the process related to field requests, okay? So to begin, a customer calls in, reports an issue or concern to 52 Water. Call center staff is equipped to collect information, do some discovery work, look for existing reports, and if appropriate, issue a service request that goes to network emergency dispatch. And then from there, networks dispatches an emergency inspector to validate the information out in the field and assign a priority level. Then they issue a work order to one of the zone managers or a geographic zone. And then once that is received, they assign the work, and if they are, you know, at or above capacity, then you know, they assign it to a contractor. You know, in short, that's sort of like the process. Now, this is the process as designed and the way it should ideally work. Okay. I'll be the first to recognize that there are existing gaps, internal gaps and opportunities. We are currently working on finding some solutions to some of those, especially as it relates to internal communication and collaboration. And I will say with confidence, despite, you know, any perception out there, that with confidence, I will say that the willingness is there. It exists across divisions, but really it is a matter of capacity, not will, not skill, but just of capacity. And
Renee, can I interrupt here for a second? Because I think the gaps that I see that are just of concern to me are in the yellow and the blue boxes. Because what this suggests is that work order is generated, it's given a priority level, and then in some capacity it's prioritized and the work is done. And I guess I have no way of knowing how that happened, and it certainly is not communicated to us, and definitely is not communicated to the person who calls. And so I feel like one thing that I see that's missing here is I'm glad that Networks is out there doing it, but A, there has to be some more certainty that consumers have. B, there has to be communication along with that. And so as part of what's happening, letting people know, all right, we've got your report, we've issued a work order, this is the priority schedule, and now this is the proposed deadline to fix it. That's I guess the gaps that I'm seeing.
Yeah, and I share those concerns with you, council member. As you know, it is customer service staff that is the face of the utility, right? So we are tasked with taking all that in and providing the information that is available to us. Some recent developments is, and I'll share because I know you know this, but I don't know if everyone on the call does, but we have made modifications to our customer escalation process. So the escalations that come from external stakeholders, all council members, your staff, mayor office, mayor staff, homeowner associations, that sort of escalations, they were handled by Robert Jackson and a couple of individuals in the past. We have modified that process now. Ms. Jackie Shine will be leading that team. She will be leading Robert Jackson, a supervisor and 2 staff members dedicated solely to the shepherding of these escalations. I've had a number of meetings with the networks and sort of like the operations side of the business. And I will share a couple of just recent developments. Last night, I had a really pleasant conversation with Fred Tharp in Networks, and we agreed to schedule a meeting next week. So customer service staff and operations staff, get in the same room and decide what additional information can be included in CastWorks, one of our systems. So customer-facing staff who respond to customers and like to your staff, have more or additional information regarding some of those projects. And then the last piece and the last update is that we will be working with network staff and customer service and to have a sort of like a spreadsheet mechanism in which they will provide a weekly update on all the projects related to escalations received from all of your staff. And Jackie Shine will be the point of contact between networks, customer service, and any escalation that is received.
All right, Renee, can I stop you? I think that's good news for us. I just want to make sure I understand. So from now on, if District C, Councilmember Palmer has a complaint about something in Algiers, rather than reaching out to Fred or Grace or you, our first stop is Jackie Shine.
Yes, and my plan is to schedule a call next week. I'd love to schedule a call in which I have some representation from all of your offices, one of your staff members, so we can introduce Jackie Shine now as the primary point of contact. And we will share at that time, this is next week, the guidelines that we have created and developed in regards to the timeliness of the responses, the use of that spreadsheet, how we're going to communicate information formally on a weekly basis, at a minimum, at a weekly basis. Yeah, I guess at a minimum. Okay. So probably I'm going to ask Christy to help me schedule and coordinate this meeting. So expect that for next week.
I think you'll have a lot of council members who are eager to jump on that. I see Councilmember Palmer shaking her head. And then obviously the spreadsheets will be a big help. I will say I appreciate that because I don't want to feel like I have to call Fred or call Gassan or Christy or Renee. It's just sort of sometimes it's well, I've called Christy the last 2 times, so now it's Fred's turn. Now it's Renee's turn. So I think having a single point of contact will be better for us. That's great. Now, what about the communication side for the ratepayer, the person who calls? Like, if you know, little Mr. Jones has a problem somewhere, and so he doesn't get in touch with us. That also happens too. Doesn't contact their council member. How will Mr. Jones know that this issue is in the queue and sort of what to expect within a time period? I'm not looking, I think the phrase I used earlier is I'm not looking for mathematical certainty, just a period of reasonable time where they have an expectation.
Yeah, and really to establish clear expectations on that one. I don't think we even know the current state, right? Unfortunately. I believe Verint, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Gassan can correct me if I'm wrong, Verint will be rolled out, I believe, either at the end of May or around June. So, in a couple of months. And with Verint, we'll be able to track all that. And Verint will give us the ability to better communicate internally. It'll have like alarms that if a certain event does not get completed within a certain time frame, then it goes up the chain of command, right? And Verint is a use that's been around for many years, and I'm really happy that we're going to have that tool. And back to the
Renee, let me before you proceed, let me just make sure for clarity, just 2 points to address Mr. Chairman's question. Well, one, while we're standing up this new escalation team, we're hoping that it's going to satisfy and bring more better communication with you. So to equip you with accurate communication, you can communicate with your constituency. By no means we want that process to take over the routine 52 water system, because then it will be overcome and it will be overwhelmed and it will lose effectiveness. Yeah. Having said that, we owe it to ourselves and to you to make sure that the 52 water process is also strengthened and improved to eliminate at the end of the day, the need for escalation. So what we've identified internally is that we need to communicate better within our ranks to make sure that the folks at 52 Water are equipped with the most accurate and timely information to be able to address any call that come in, from Mr. Jones, right? So those have to be done in parallel for both to deliver better results. So we acknowledge that. Renee is doing a very good job breaking down some of the barriers and bringing more teamwork and more information, sharing to enable us to do that. I just want to share that, so because we're cognizant that we're not telling you what you need to know because we don't know. Internally, we're just not communicating very well. So we've defined that, and hopefully we're going to bring improvement in that area now.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be as blunt as I can be about that. Where my major aggravation is we've reported something multiple times. There's a work order that's been open not for a week or a month. It's significantly longer than that, and I cannot get an answer. And I think people are willing to have a degree of patience if they know there's a zone at which the problem is going to be addressed.
Right, and just on that point, I think part of our challenge is that obviously resources, but also we don't want to hide behind that. We are in the business of being creative and do more with less at the end of the day. We just have to. So in combination of Renee, Ron Spooner, Fred Tharp, myself, and a few others, I'm going to start looking at the priority list and then maybe establish kind of a little bit better way to address these long-term ones, even though maybe they're not as priority in terms of, you know, the impact on the community or the neighborhood, but nonetheless, if it's something that's 2 years old, has to somehow move up in the priority and be resolved. So we're gonna collectively come up with a better assessment. It just deserves it because it hasn't been reassessed for a while.
Well, and Ghassan and Renee, can I ask this as I'm sitting here thinking about it? The next quarterly report is due, I think, in April. It's the second, month. And I heard Renee say his KPI investigation probably takes 60 or 90 days. I mean, I think what I would like to see is both abstraction and concrete both being brought to light in the report. So these are the processes. We're starting to see that. Now these are the data and what the results are showing, to the extent that can happen in April. And then hopefully by the time we get to June, not only sort of like focused on hurricane season, but now that there's been more of a 360 review and I guess real time and investigation, having actually that laid out. And I mean, the other thing, just for the public to know, Renee sort of did an undercover boss thing, right? Like when he first got here, he went and did some of these processes in anonymity because people didn't know him yet. And look, Renee, I think that actually serves people because you get to see firsthand, not just Renee as now I'm the customer service director and I'm dictating policy. I'm Renee, a person who's trying to get this resolved, and these are the hurdles I have to jump through.
Absolutely. Thank you for those comments. And yeah, what I'll do is I'll make as much progress as I can, before that meeting, at least to share whatever findings and, at what point we're at. And like Ghassan said, ideally in regards to the escalation, this escalation process improvement is not an end all to the problem, right? It's not an end all solution. In an ideal world, that would go away. So we're going to be making improvements in that process because they're customers, right? They're just coming in through a different channel, but still customers nonetheless with needs. But it's sort of a fix while we fix the actual original intake process, which is 52 water. In an ideal world, 52 water would work the way it should. And that's what we're going to try to get there, right? And I think that's the presentation.
Okay, I thought that was the last slide, but I just wanted to make sure. I mean, look, I appreciate the information today. I think, Ghassan, before we sort of close out on this, you said a little bit about AMI. Would you mind kind of speaking to where that stands, advanced metering infrastructure, the smart meters, sort of what Sewage and Water Board is thinking about in timeline? And then I guess from my perspective, just summarization is, I know Renee's trying to come in and implement these processes, but I think all of us, the stakeholders, want to know the results of those. And so if you're changing something and revising, what actually are you seeing as a result of that? And be able to show, look, this is, I don't know if it's green, yellow, red. This is where we've seen real progress. This is still something that we're working on that could become, and then this is something that could blow up in our faces. And how do we fix it sooner rather than later? So I leave that to you, but I do think that's kind of to set out the framework of what we're looking for. But I did want to hear about AMI, and I have 2 comments that I know of, and then I think we can close out the meeting. Ghassan, thank you, Renee, for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity again, Mr. Chairman. So with AMI, that project is in general just for public's benefit. It's a program. It's a project that will bring smart meters to replace the current meters. So we're replacing every single meter ultimately with a meter that actually sends information through transmission towers to a centralized location with your actual consumption. And it could be, it's constant reading, constant emitting of information, which bring promptness and accuracy to our billing situation. So that's the end game. Where we are now is that we had the kickoff meeting a month ago. There's a lot of work that's happening, basically in collaboration with a consultant to put together an RFP for the actual furnish and install of these meters. So this is the phase 1, which is progressing nicely. We're spending a lot of time making sure we are surveying a good sample of our meters to be able to have a quality RFP with as much accurate information for the vendors that propose to reflect an accurate bid at the end of the day. Basically, we're describing the environment by which a vendor, an installer will be working within. So actually to minimize any change orders, any interruptions in the actual execution. So we're now gathering a lot of data, providing it to the consultant to, kind of assess it, compare it to the universe of what that looks like, the complexity, the difficulty of the implementation, and putting together an RFP. We're hopeful that we would hit the street with that in fourth quarter of this year. Again, hopefully sooner rather than later, but we don't want to be hasty because we want to do this right. We want to have a proposal or RFP that's very well done to attract as many vendors as possible, quality vendors. And I alluded to the funding. Obviously, that's crucial. This is a, in a generic term, about $50 million project. So we want to make sure we have all the funding to make sure we can be aggressive in the timeline of execution, because this could be an 8-year implementation. It could be 2-year based on the cash flow and availability of funds, obviously. So we want to make sure we have as much of the needed funds on the front end to commit and do it in the most aggressive timeline possible, again, to deliver that project and solve our billing issue. So hopefully that brings some light and clarity to where we are, and I'm happy to expand if you need.
Yeah, and no, the only thing I would say, and I don't know if my colleagues have any comments to close outside of these couple things, is I know Sewage and Water Board is going to remain competitive for state capital outlay for the substation. I know I've said this privately, but say it publicly. However, in addition to what the mayor's work and the New Orleans delegation are doing, whatever we can do to be a part of that, we're happy to do that. Our relationships are not just with the New Orleans delegation, they're outside of that. And frankly, I don't know how we could say it any other way. There's no more single important infrastructure issue in the city of New Orleans than ensuring Sewage and Water Board is powered correctly. So I want to make that commitment for us. Councilmember Palmer, I know you're coming off the mute, and Councilmember Banks, to see you're up. So if you have any comments, please let us know.
No, I just want to thank y'all. I'm feeling much better about y'all's commitment to customer service. I hope we can continue that. But with the AMI, what is the goal? 100%. How long will it take us to get there?
Again, I cannot genuinely commit to a timeline without the actual opening of the bids and having the commitment from the vendor. And before that, we can, through the help of our expert by our side, to set a realistic expectation of what that implementation phase looks like. They are studying our world, our universe, and compare it to the universe of other meter implementation and see what what could be done. I'm hoping we can do this in 2 years. Again, because the funding is shaping up, and hopefully will allow us to do that.
So we would be at 100% AMI meters in 2 years? That's like a goal?
So 2 years from obviously the proposals and all that. So I'm hoping 22, 23, and again, I don't want to overcommit here. It could be delivered in 24 in its fullest form.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, you're muted.
Thank you, Jay. I said I wasn't going to do it, and I did it. What I was saying was, I think that's something that we do need to focus on, right? As part of this, things that are headed in a direction. You have T7 that's going to come online in 2023. We're shooting for potential additional power substation around the same time period. T8 and T9 will be down the road. We're talking about AMI within the same time period. And I realize that doesn't turn the ship around immediately, but it's what we have to work forward to, because those things are not little changes like flipping a switch or buying new software, or even frankly hiring some people. This is transformative, right? I mean, getting off of the diesel generated, steam generated turbines. I know we always like to tease Jay about his age, but like this machinery dates back literally to pre-World War II, in some cases World War I. I mean, we just cannot expect to keep on operating that way. And I think we all know that we're at an inflection point where our priorities collectively need to be getting that power up and running and making the system work as much as possible. Councilmember Banks.
Thank you. I'm surprised that you didn't remind the people that I was 16 when they put those machines in. I'm surprised you didn't say that.
That's for the next meeting.
Thank you. Ghassan, I wanted to commend you for the candor in which you have expressed the actual state of the system. And I think one of the mistakes that has been made for a very, very long time is that we collectively, long before any of us got here, but we collectively as a governmental entity have not been forthright with letting the public know the state that the system is in. It was in a shambles. We inherited it. It is still far from being good, but we cannot keep kicking the can down the road and pretending that it's something that it is not. And I appreciate you being honest and letting folks know where we are, because we can no longer try to fool the public and making them to think that this is just going to go away. We got to be intentional about making sure that everybody understands where the system is. Everybody sees or saw what happened in Jackson. I firmly believe that we ain't but an eye blink away from Jackson. And we've got to make sure that people understand that, because the only way that we're going to get the public's confidence to do what we need to do is to have them working with us on the same page. So I just want to tell you, thank you for having the fortitude and the integrity to stand up and tell people just how bad our system is. Because I think for too long, we did not do that. And I just want to say thank you publicly for that.
Thank you for your comment. And I think the public deserves nothing but honesty and forwardness. So
absolutely. Thank you.
And look, Ghassan, to that point, like, I do also appreciate the fact, the recognition at the start of the meeting that, there are different groups that you have to answer to and that are part of this journey, right? You have the board, you have the public, you have the council, right? Not only through the quarterly reports, but also through its rate making. And I think what Jay is saying is right. The fact that you have been candid and held yourself accountable and the agency is a change. And I think the whole purpose of these meetings is really, in my view, twofold. And I'm sure Jay, as a board member, you feel the same way. It's number one, to communicate about what's going on publicly, and then number two, to talk about where are their strengths and where there are weaknesses, and how are we getting those weaknesses addressed. So, all right, with that, I'm going to read the two comments that we have, and then we can adjourn the meeting subject to anything else. So, first comment is from Gilbert Crowden, who is the president of Tall Timbers Owners Association. And he writes, I would like to address a water bill that we've been trying to resolve for over 3 years now. I spoke with Mr. Corbin twice. We had 2 hearings on our water bill. It had been around $950 to $1,100. We've been paying around $250, which was the previous bills. We have spent money on leak detection companies, plumbers. No one found leaks or problems. Our balance is over $12,700 while we pay $250 each month. We only have a swimming pool on the meters, no restrooms or toilets. I've sent photos of the park inside of the Tall Timbers subdivision. We would like to get this problem resolved as soon as possible. And, I guess to the point made earlier, for both of these comments, this is where Ms. Shine can be, an asset to us in trying to get a longstanding issue like this resolved. The next one is Anne Marie Savolio. She has a similar issue. She writes, I wish to make it known to the council that I've requested a hearing about billing problems for the Sewage and Water Board of New Orleans monthly since April 2021. Maybe means April 2020, when I received an estimated bill for a much larger amount than I typically pay. I've now requested a hearing monthly whenever I receive a bill, which now totals almost $2,500 a month. I wish to refute the billing and make changes based on my photographs of my own meter. I've yet to hear from Sewage and Water Board of New Orleans for 12 months about scheduling an appointment. The council must hold Sewage and Water Board accountable for the estimated bills and overcharges accruing to customers and force them to create either a process for virtual hearings or a process to grant amnesty for customers who wish to have their bills resolved. So, I guess with everybody on the line, in bumping up notice, we've gotten now 2 complaints of bills that have been longstanding, and my hope is with this process with Jackie, both on the billing and the infrastructure, that we can get these sorted out sooner rather than later. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
It is entertained, sir. Move to adjourn.
All right, I think Councilmember Palmer beat you, but I'll take the second, Councilmember Banks. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4 yeas. Nathan, Councilmember Palmer, Councilmember Banks, Councilmember Glapion, and me. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for the meeting.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Everybody wear a mask. Be safe.
And get vaccinated.